Hello, and welcome back for Unit 2 of our Modern World History course here at Waldorf University Online. And this week, we're going to take a look at a few different peoples around the world and how they're responding to European expansion. So we're going to do this in a few different ways. And during the first week, I think we did a pretty good job. Most of your Unit 1 essays looked all right. Make sure we're reviewing those APA guidelines, make sure we're thinking about how we're organizing the arguments we're making and using evidence to build the different points we're making, and then make sure to cite that properly. And those are a few things we could probably do across the board as a group to improve a little bit as we move into Unit 2 here. And this week we will have a discussion board, again, similar to last week, and then we'll also have an essay. So over on the discussion board, one thing I want to point you towards is making sure that we're fully engaging. Some of you did a good job explaining who you are and where you're from, but then maybe skipped the second part where you're supposed to talk about the text. And the content is what matters in the course as much as we want to get to know each other and know those perspectives. So this week, what I'm going to be really looking for on the discussion board is how we're bringing in that outside content and pairing that with our unique individual perspectives to build some analysis and have some quality conversations. So I want you to make sure that you're providing yourself enough time to not just type something out and kind of hastily throw it up there, look at the question, think about whatever might already be in your brain. I want you to be looking at this question, which is looking at the experience of conquered peoples and how it's similar or different based on the ruler. So sometimes we kind of get into this trap of thinking about all conquered peoples or peoples that are experiencing outside forces acting upon their culture and society respond in the same way, no matter what their culture looks like, no matter who the ruler is. I want you to take a look in the chapters and find examples of why or why not that experience is either similar or different. You can see the actual question over there on the discussion board, but make sure that we're taking the time not only to put together a quality initial response, but then also when you respond to classmates. I saw some of us using just what I would call a real kind of not great practices in some of our responses during week 1, where it's just like, oh, awesome, I like how you said this. I want you to be diving deeper than that and actually engaging with what people had to say and providing your own unique analysis of that. So expectations a little higher on the discussion board in week 2 here. On your essay, we did a good job with our essays the first week, aside from maybe we want to keep thinking about how we're organizing things, how we're citing things, how we're bringing in evidence. But this week you're going to look at kind of a very broad question, thinking about how peoples throughout the world in places like Asia, Africa, the Americas kind of responded to European expansion during the time period we're studying. One of the easy things to slide into is to look at all of the people all over the world as victims of this European expansion that's happening during this time period. And I want us to be focused on agency. And agency is a really important skill for us to consider when we think about history. So agency, kind of broadly, is the idea how individuals and groups shape the outcomes of historical events. When we think about agency, this is how each of us, and maybe we can understand on this personal level, makes choices that then shape the events that are happening around us. And sometimes that can be very small in our own life. I know we've all probably made bad decisions, so we can then see the outcomes of that and how we shaped those outcomes. This also happens on a historical scale where specific people in specific moments make decisions that shape the outcomes of history. So I want you to think about that as you're kind of putting together this analysis and avoid kind of just looking at these people as victims. Think about how they incorporated European peoples into their societies. That's one of the things we're going to see here in North America a lot. The idea that like as the French arrive as fur traders in the Midwest, the part of the country I live in, they're going to start living with tribes and they're going to be incorporated into those tribes. They're going to marry in, they're going to learn the language, they're going to learn the customs, and they're going to be able to function and gain an economic benefit, especially as the fur trade rises, as they incorporate into those. We also see adaptation, the idea that people working together for mutual goals. So for instance, in the 1830s in Iowa, we could see this with Black Hawk, which is commonly called the Black Hawk War. He's a Sauk leader that's going to lead his people back into Illinois. And when the American government starts to chase him towards the Mississippi River, we can see adaptation with the Dakota people who ally with the United States against their traditional enemies, the Sauk, and what's ultimately going to become the massacre at Bad Axe Creek and the Mississippi River, where the confluence of those two bodies of water meet. The Dakota are going to fight on the side of the U.S., and maybe we can see them working with the United States for mutual benefit, and we can see adaptation there. We also can see some of these other things like acculturation or violent resistance that is going to take place as we consider these kind of questions as well. So a lot to potentially explore and talk about in your Unit 2 essay. As always, make sure you're reaching out if you have different things to discuss. If you have questions on any of the content, questions on what I'm asking you to do, or just things going on that you want me to be aware of, I appreciate the hard work you've put in the class so far, and I look forward to the great things you're going to do this week. Good luck.